Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 3:32, so we're 2 minutes behind. This is a joint workshop between the Aransas County Commissioners and the Rockport City Council. Welcome, and I will defer to the judge who has the information you're interested in hearing.
All right, like the mayor said, 3:32, it's 13th day of February, 2025. We are at the City of Rockport Service Center located at 2751 Highway 35 North Bypass, Rockport, Texas, 78382. I call this joint workshop to order. Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney?
Here.
Commissioner Casterline?
Here.
Commissioner Russo? Here. Commissioner Dupnick?
Here.
Judge Garza?
Here. There's a quorum of the court. Mayor?
We will call the roll also. Ward 1.
Here.
Ward 2 is not present. Ward 3.
Here.
Ward 4 is not present. We do have a quorum. I'm present.
All right, we've got a quorum of the city. At this time, we'll hear from citizens to be heard. I've got one signed up. Do we have any others? No. And Andrew he asked if he could speak after the presentation. I'm okay with that. You have any objections to that? All right.
So we'll go on to item number 1, which is discuss attainable housing for the community, and I'm going to refer this to Jeff Sostrom.
Purposes of brevity, I know you all have extremely busy schedules, which I appreciate you all being here, but I've written this down just so I can kind of keep on track. First, I'd like to thank the council and the county commissioners for agreeing to meet with us today to talk about housing for our community. In addition, I'd like to thank the mayor, the county judge, and Vanessa. We've had preliminary discussions on how we might start to finally address the need and creation for affordable and attainable housing for our community. As I begin, allow me to state publicly that there is no clandestine conspiracy that has been created. No deals have been made, no commitments have been offered. The focus of the partnership over these past couple of years has been to ensure that efforts moving forward must be transparently and collectively between the city, the county, and the school district, and whatever opportunities may be developed or presented for consideration. Today is our first public discussion of efforts that are underway to discuss, evaluate, and ultimately consider what, if any, efforts are worthy of the needs and desires of our community, the elected leadership, our employers and workforce, and the private sector. During my first year here in Rockport, 2 consensus issues related to the work ahead that we had. 1, we don't want heavy industry in our community. 2, how do we create housing for our vital workforce that is affordable? Today we're here to talk about attainable housing tools and resources that might possibly begin to address the demand and need for housing of our city and county workers, teachers, first responders, and our workforce overall. To begin the discussion, I've kind of put it into 3 categories. First, I'd like to talk for a minute about our housing assessment. Second, talk about the types of housing and tools for addressing housing shortages and demand. And then 3, the path forward, should you deem it worthwhile. Over the past 2 years, the partnership has been working to quantify the supply and demand for housing throughout our county, working with the development community and employers to gauge interest or a willingness to develop projects that could fill the gaps in our housing supply, evaluating past projects within Aransas County, and efforts across the Gulf Coast and beyond in initiatives aimed at solving the housing dilemma that many communities are confronting for affordable and attainable housing. Following my comments and potentially any questions that you may or may not have, one of the projects that has been developed over the past year will be introduced to you as one potential way to drive down the cost of single-family housing that provides a new subdivision with home prices starting at approximately $250,000, with an emphasis on single-family homes within a prioritized price band of $250,000 to $350,000 homes. In a future workshop, we would like to talk about additional projects and strategies that could potentially address specific workforce housing needs and different ways to drive down the cost of housing beyond single-family home ownership. According to our research, there's never been a comprehensive housing assessment that's been performed for Aransas County. The partnership and collaboration with many sponsors contracted with Community Development Strategies, or CDS, to create and deliver the first comprehensive housing assessment for Aransas County. Many of you recall that we invited CDS to be one of our speakers at the 2024 Economic Summit to review their findings with the folks in attendance. Much of the information that was assessed is information that many already knew. However, now we have it documented, and the assessment can be used as a barometer in future years in determining what results have been made related to housing in our county. We distributed to you an executive summary of the assessment that we put together that is available for your review. There are a few key points that I'd like to emphasize that came out of this study specifically. Number one, the assessment concluded that there is an immediate and long-term need for new housing in Aransas County. 27% of all employees live and work in Aransas County. The problem is this is a downward trend. In 2005, we were at 40%. At 2010, we were in the low 30s. And if that trend continues, that potentially becomes problematic for our community. Average weekly wage at the time of the assessment was approximately $896. Currently, over 3,000 potential lots are in various stages of development. Of these, the majority of new homes are in the $400,000 price range and above. CDS calculated a 5-year projection that identified approximately 1,200 new households in the next 5 years, adding 2,762 people to our community. The city has had approximately 200 new home building permits consistently over the last 3 to 5 years. Demand for housing from the assessment and the survey that was conducted illustrated demand for housing at or below 300,000, but for this to occur, the assessment concluded that support and participation from the local governments would be needed. The median household income overall within the county was $55,000.
Recording in progress.
$62,000 for owners.
Recording stopped.
And $47,000 for renters. 45% of households in our county earn less than $50,000. And the average household size in Aransas County is 2.28 people. It's 2.15 people within Rockport. The employer survey had roughly 400 responses to the survey that was published. Within that, the respondents illustrated support for new entry-level for-sale housing, for moderately priced multifamily apartments. They had a strong preference for living in the Rockport-Fulton area. They identified that storm risk was not an issue that they felt was a significant factor. And they had a preference for single-family detached housing and were willing to consider smaller footprints, under 1,800 square foot and below, in looking at new housing options. For apples to apples, I wanted to just give you some current stats, or the ones that are most relevant or most recently available since the assessment was done. According to HUD, our 2024 income limits for Aransas County, median family income is $76,300. 50% of the AMI, or area median income, is $38,000, while 80% is $61,000. This becomes more important as we talk about some other projects as it relates to multifamily or rental units. In housing, based on November 1, 2024 data, the average price of a home in Aransas County was $539,000. This comes from the Texas A&M Real Estate Center. The median price for the county was $367,000. and there are approximately 12.2 months of inventory available. In Rockport, the average price, $547,000. The median price, $500,000, and 12.8 months in inventory. For the census, the county population estimated 25,374. The median owner cost with a mortgage, $1,743. The median gross rent, $1,052. Median household income, $61,700. And 17% of our folks are in poverty throughout the county. In Rockport, the population, 10,900. Median owner cost with a mortgage, $1,965. Median gross rent, $1,300. Median household income, $63,000, and 15.6% of our population in poverty. I want to talk for just a minute, just from the 1,000-foot view, because there's a lot of controversy swirling around the country with regard to affordable housing, workforce housing, attainable housing. Everybody's changing terms. But for purposes of the conversation today, I've broken it into 4 categories. One is public housing, the vouchers, the low income. 2 is affordable housing as it relates to the utilization of housing tax credits. Attainable housing is what we're looking at in terms of workforce housing that has multiple price bands within it. And then market rate housing, where it's basically left up to the private sector to do their deals. Tools that could be utilized, there's a gamut of them. Tax abatement, tax increment reinvestment zones, 380, 381 development agreements, which we're really here to talk about today. Housing finance corporations, property finance corporations, opportunity zone funding. There's a little bit of confusion on that. That's really an incentive for the private developers. That's not a public incentive tool. Housing tax credits through the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. Just remind you, we are non-entitlement as city and county, so that limits our accessibility to some of those CDBG programs that you can get as an entitlement city or county at the state level. The Rural Development Administration, neighborhood empowerment zones, public improvement districts, land banks, and then there's lots of talks about property donations, philanthropic contributions. We've seen a number of communities that have gone out and raised millions of dollars and still haven't solved the housing needs that they have for their community. I've listed these tools simply to illustrate the types of programs that are out there and to let you know that these, and it may not be exhaustive, there may be other programs that we haven't looked at, but these are the ones that we've evaluated and compared to our local economy and our community to attempt to determine which of these may have the best benefit, the most benefit back to us and to you. There are a lot of pros and cons to most of these tools, and I'm happy to go into more detail, if not this afternoon, at a time that's convenient to you to talk more about it. So the path forward. Today we're focusing on single-family homeownership housing and how the city and the county might consider a public-private partnership to help buy down the cost of housing for the workforce of Aransas County. Over the last couple of years, anecdotally, I've heard a number of things. We've been talking about this, attainable housing, for years. We're able to attract teachers to our school district, but they can't find a place to live and we lose them. A majority of the public sector employees have to look outside of Aransas County for attainable housing. Without new housing choices, how are we going to grow our student population to try and reduce the financial burden that is placed on, from Robin Hood and placed on the school district? Where's our labor force going to live to support not only our existing businesses, but potentially new job opportunities that might be developed without simply losing existing employees to new employers? And if we could reverse the trend of people moving outside of the county for housing, could we also see new benefits of increased tax bases, increased sales tax income, more people available to support our community and our kids, their activities, from the Little League to the PTA to the volunteers, et cetera. And probably one of the most popular, why should we give corporate welfare and tax abatement to new developers at this time? In closing, I'd just like to say what we are not talking about specifically is tax abatement. It's a separate program. What we are talking about is developers and homeowners going on the tax roll, maximizing private sector investments with public sector infrastructure improvements, creating a public-private and equitable partnership where the developer fronts the infrastructure cost and is reimbursed over a period of time for a portion of that infrastructure investment. And in return, through this partnership, we lower the cost of new homeowners to have an opportunity of living in our community. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think with regard to the agenda, I'll talk for hours if you want, but if we want to go into the developer and Lynn Engineering, be happy to do that at this time.
Yep. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we'll move on to item number 2, presentation from prospective developer regarding housing project. Stuart?
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members, Judge, and Commissioners. Appreciate the time. I'll let her pass that out before it's too far, so not too loud with her high heels.
Would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Stuart Lynn with Lynn Engineering and Lynn Development. So I'll tell a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Stuart. My business? I grew up in Blessing, a couple hours from here. My business is Lynn Engineering. It's right there on Highway 35. Been there since a couple different buildings. One of them got torn down by the Hurricane Harvey. We're here, but we've been downtown next to the proposed courthouse here for the last two and a half years here in Rockport. But first slide, just tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Blessing, a couple hours from here. Okay, this one? Forward, perfect. All right, I've been an engineer by trade. I grew up in a small little town. My dad was a minister. We traveled around small towns in Texas. Actually, the first vacation we ever did was in Contiki Beach right here when I was a young kid. So I'm familiar with Rockport growing up, and when I got into business about 20 years ago, I made a commitment that if I got in business, 10% would go to the widows, orphans, and the needy, and that's literally my mission is how we started in business 20 years ago. Started doing windstorm. If you're familiar with engineering in general, you don't go to college to do windstorm engineering. Civil, structural, mechanical, those things. By some stroke of circumstance, our house burned. I got ready to do windstorm my house, had no idea what to do. Called the state of Texas, and they said, hey, you're an engineer, fill out this form, along with 800 other engineers in the state of Texas, which is why there were so many of us at the time. I was able to do the windstorm on my own house. Fast forward, I started getting phone calls to do windstorm engineering. So that's what put me in business 2008 and started from there. First business, found out about a guy that getting ready to retire in Rockport, bought his clientele, and that's literally what got me in Rockport in 2010, 11 timeframe. And been here, ever since. Brandy, which has been employed with us for over 10 years, as in that office full time. We have engineer, EIT, and a couple inspectors out of that Rockport office. So, fast forward, engineering is my bread and butter. If you know anything about the state of Texas, a windstorm, it can be very difficult sometimes with the state regulations and all. And I got really nervous after starting having all my eggs in one basket. So I bought a construction company. And then after that, started doing some development where I figured I could mitigate my risk doing our own engineering and doing the infrastructure. And that's my passion is development. So I have someone running the engineering business, someone running construction, and I spend most of my time on the development side. So with that, I come to Rockport quite often. Brandy, here local, her husband grew up here all of his life, and she's on a couple of boards, and she's telling me about this housing study. We need more housing. She's passionate about helping the locals, and we're doing some similar projects in Bay City, Matagorda County. So I told her, let's talk to Jeffrey. Let's figure out if there's some way to work something out. I'm a it's my passion, and I'm happy to go on that road. So that's literally what started this conversation a year and a half ago. So from that, we started talking with Jeffrey, found a piece of property here in Rockport off of Market Street, and started running some numbers and talking to the different entities. I've got a bank that's ready to finance it. And so literally what we're here today is for kind of give you a very high-level overview of what we're looking to do. And from there, the conversations can continue and go from there. So that's very high level what we're wanting to accomplish today. As I said, our vision, our mission statement is we think big to work big to give big, and to positively impact the lives of our employees, clients, and community. So our vision is if we can work hard, take care of our employees, then take care of our clients, then we can give back to the communities. And that's literally what we're passionate about and what's our vision. Our unique advantage that we bring to the table that's not typical is because we have our own engineering staff, engineering company. We have our contractors that are local to us, either our personal contractors, the ones that we've subbed for years, and we also have our own surveying department as well. So we literally can do everything in-house, which helps. It helps mitigate the risk, and it also helps keep the price down because, as you know, when you start dealing with 2 or 3 levels of subcontractors, they all add a little bit to it, and before you know it, you're paying 30 or 40% more than if you did it yourself. So that's our unique advantage. A quick project overview. I know it's hard to see on the screen there, but in your packet, this is the property that's right behind the dollar store on Market Street. 32 acres, I believe. And what we're looking at doing, we've laid it out, and there's a quick little rendering on that next page. Again, subject to change. We just put this together to have an idea of how many lots we could get, and run the density, and start running some preliminary numbers. There's an existing pond there, so we could use that, increase that for our detention to make sure we're meeting all the drainage and detention requirements. And that's your lots there. One of the things we want to spend a little bit of time on is part of the not only the housing study, but also real life examples of what's out there in Rockport. And I want to brief this so we have plenty of time for questions and comments, and we can always come back to some of this. One thing is for sure, there's no way that we can do this project in this setting without some type of 380, 381, or a TERS, or some type of reimbursement. It's not that the project can't be done, it's just the project to get houses at $250,000, there's no way, because with the price of the land and the infrastructure costs, and then by the time a builder comes in and builds, there's no way the price can be at the $250 price range. So this is why we're doing this option. I've put an option on this property and close on it here in a couple weeks, knowing that we can either go this route, or if this isn't something that the city or the county is wanting to entertain, then this would be a typical development where I would go in and develop it, sell it to either production builder or the custom home builders, and then whatever house they put on, they determine the price based on the market, and they sell it for $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, whatever the market will entail. The reason why this works in this setting is because I won't sell these lots to builders and they sell them to whatever price they can. There would be, for lack of a better word, there'd be callbacks. In fact, I have to sell these houses at a certain price to where it makes sense to get them at $250,000. So if the city and the county enter into this agreement and I get reimbursed for just the infrastructure portion, there'll be a set price where if I sell them over a certain amount, so much per square foot, then I don't get reimbursed. That protects everyone involved, where y'all aren't going to give a rebate and then a developer retails them at a high price and it looks like y'all gave a rebate for something that wasn't helping the community. So all that can be addressed in a 380 and a 381. The big thing that I want to spend just a couple minutes on, and then we can bounce on. These are 2 projects that we're doing right now. One of them, Ballard Park, is in Bay City. That's 34 acres, plus we got another 18, so 52 acres, 210-ish lots. 100% of those are under contract and being built right now as we speak. A little smaller in Palacios, if you're familiar with Matagorda County, a little smaller community. Bay City has 19,000, Palacios has about 4,000. Pelican Place is a project right there in Palacios, only 4,000 people are there, 70 lots. We have 28 or 29 of them that are already built and have houses on those as well. So this is something we're just not starting to scratch from Rockport. We've done this 2 other times right here locally, and in negotiation we're doing it with point comfort as well. Here's some quick, this Pelican Place is the most similar to here in Rockport in the fact that we would actually be building these houses just like we are in Pelican Place. Typically have 4 different floor plans to choose from. Each one has a little different elevation, whether it's a gable or a hip, to kind of change the exterior look and have a, thank you very much. And then have a kitchen. We normally have 3 or 4 different options, color palettes. That way they're able to have some, they can choose a little bit, but they can't, it's not a custom home where they can pick, every different cabinet known to man. And this is what we've done in Palacios. Here's a quick little rundown. In 2021, we bought the property. It was valued at $100,000. In 2022, we had 9 houses. The property then was valued at $1 million for the entire piece of property. And then 2023 up to 2.2. 2024 is all the way up to 4.1, and estimated for next year, which is this year's tax period, would be up to 4.3 million. So literally 4 years ago, a property that was valued at 100,000 is up to 4.3 million because of the infrastructure and the houses that were put on there. Now granted, some of that, the tax revenue that goes in there would be to pay back the infrastructure, but once it's all paid back, 100% of whatever tax revenue comes for that goes back to the city and the respective taxing entity. And a couple more quick, and then we can, I'd love to answer any questions or comments. Rough numbers, just a very basic to make sure, we had to run these numbers to make sure it was viable before we started. I'm talking to everyone. The infrastructure cost, around 6.5 million for the entire property. We make 163 lots. That, along with the contractor's price, we have 2, maybe 3, but 2 for sure contractors that are in the Corpus area. Chris McMillan is one of them, and Garrett Dorsey is another one. They both have construction companies that work for, do a lot of stuff for Thanksgiving Homes. If you're familiar with Corpus Christi Housing Authority, they build houses, this type of house, and I've talked them into, if they do this, it'll be a volume play. They can do a lot at one time. Clayberg Bank has agreed to give me a substantial line of credit to get these built, and so they can do them on volume. So they agreed to sell these to us under our supervision at their exact cost plus 10%, which is cheaper than any type of house you can get anywhere else as far as a 10% margin. So 6.5 million divided by 163 lots, somewhere around $50,000 per lot for your lot cost. For the actual infrastructure, by the time they build that house, mark it up 10%, rough numbers, you're around $250,000. So I want to stop right there and spend a couple of minutes on that. That's about $210 a square foot, and that is why, in order for this to happen, there'd have to be some type of reimbursement for the infrastructure, because as it is now, we'd be selling that house. Yes, that contractor's going to get 10%, but I'm literally selling the lot is $50,000 I spent on. I'm literally selling it for that same price. So I'm, as a developer, is making less than $10,000, if that, with the hopes that I'm going to get reimbursement with the 380 to 381. So that's how it makes financial sense. So without this, I'd literally be still doing a project and breaking even at best, which is not a good idea on 6.5 million. So that, in a nutshell, is why we're coming for a 380 or 381. I think it's a win-win for everyone. Obviously, we can't do this project without a 380 or 381. It's able to hit the 250,000 mark that the housing study said is definitely needed. And it'll also give a shot for some of these low to moderate income, median household incomes, whether it's someone working for the school district, the city, the county, any of those, that they can afford a house and live here in Rockport versus living outside the county. And one last thing I want to spend a little bit of time, and this is a real life example of what's going on. 3 weeks ago, I came and talked to the judge and the city manager, Vanessa, and this was an exact printout of what a realtor sent me, which was every house that was under 250,000 in the Rockport area. And if you'll notice, there's 8 or 10 or 12 of those, and that was available. And you'll notice it's going down the list. The first one with $207 a square foot. That's pretty close to our 210 that we're trying to model. But it's a 1970 house, only a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath with a guest. Looks like guest room or something. We showed this to both the judge and the city manager, saying, look, there's only 10 or 12, 13, however many are here in the entire city of Rockport. And this is what's there. And I made quick little notes. One was built in 1965, not really a comparable to a brand new house that we could do. Oh, fast forward, just last 2 or 3 days ago, I had the same real estate agent pull the exact same report. Every one of those that say sold, or I have a contract on them right now. So, and literally in 2 weeks, what was potentially available, those all have either contracts or sold on them, and now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that don't. So there's the true need. The biggest thing from a developer, in this case, if I'm gonna invest this money to break even in the beginning at best, and then hopefully get money reimbursed, there definitely has to be a need. And you can go out and spend, $50,000 on some type of housing study directly for my project, but it's not really worth the paper it's written on, because who really knows what's really gonna happen in the real world in a smaller town. This is data that, well, I'm 99.999% sure we build houses for $250,000, they're gonna sell. Now, could they sell for more than that? They sure could, but then I wouldn't get a rebate, so then it doesn't, it's not really helping me on that standpoint. So I think this is an ideal situation to where it's a win-win. Yes, the developer is gonna get money back on the infrastructure to pay back for that, 40 to 50,000 per lot over time. And, but it gives a chance to get, 163 houses in the city of Rockport for people to stay here locally, right here in the city. And so, with that, that's the gist of it. One quick final slide. Definitely both the city and the county. Y'all probably seen something very similar to this. This is something that's taken. You see this a lot in TERS. There's on the far left side, there's a base value of whatever the property is worth. As the 380 and 381, as the tax increment increases, building these houses, the city or the county would keep 20%. The 80% in blue would be what would go to pay back the infrastructure. And then once everything is paid back, 100% of that new value would go to the respective entities. So with that, again, I don't want to get into too much of the weeds, but a few things I think are important. Some of the things that we've talked about that are not sticklers, but things that we want to address is that we're not looking to try to, the typical mindset can be a developer's coming in here, and if you're not careful, they come in with the fancy suits and all and overpromise everything and then head out as soon as it's gone. I'm local. I've grown up 2 hours from here. I'm here all the time. All our employees have a local branch here. We're here to stay. But there are some concerns that we want to make sure that are on the city and the county side that we address. One is, yes, we want to be paid back over time, which would take, based on our calculations, it could take 22 or so years to get paid back. But the development period would be something very short. So once we got started, we started that first house, we'd only have a 5-year window to develop. Anything after that, 5 years and 1 day, nothing gets reimbursed. That gives Amy incentive to get my people to hurry up and finish the 5 years. But as a city and a county, you're not on the hook for 20 or 25 or 15 years of development. We have to get it done in 5 years. Anything after that, we don't get reimbursed for. So those are some little things that we'll put in the 380 and 381 to help mitigate the risk on y'all side. And again, it helps us finish the project faster. The quicker we can get done, the quicker it gets on the tax rolls, the quicker we can get the increase to pay for the infrastructure. So, and with that, that's a lot of information, and I get kind of excited about this, so I apologize if I talked a little fast. But if there's anything that I jumped over too fast that we want to discuss, have any questions, comments, I'd love to do my best to answer.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The area that you're talking about, has that been identified as in the county or in the city?
It's 31 or 32 acres. It's essentially made up of 3 tracts. 2 tracts are in the city limits, and then there's 1 tract that's it's all 1 tract, but it's in 3 different parcels. So 1 parcel would have to be brought into the city to be in the city limits.
Okay, with the annexation issues the way they are now, I'm not real familiar with them, but how would you propose to get that annexed, if in fact it wants to be annexed by the city?
Yeah, there's a voluntary letter that we would send to the city to say that we want to be annexed, and the city would go through, they have to notify the adjoining property owners and have a public hearing and do all that thing. But since it's part of the other 2 tracts, it's pretty straightforward.
So it's contiguous, that's not an issue.
That's right, it's contiguous, so I mean, yes. I mean, obviously they have to vote on it and approve it, but it's,
Sure. I would think our goal would be that all the houses would be owned by people that work here.
Yeah.
But there's probably no way to guarantee that. Can you kind of speak to that point?
I mean, we're on the record, but off the record, I'll say, what we did in Bay City, I'm on the record. We're saying this, on the record, I can't guarantee we'll do it here, but I'm telling you, I'm the owner, I get to make the decision, we will do something similar. We can't, for housing act, we can't just give preferential treatment to some people and not others. But what we can do is what we did in Bay City, is any of the city employees or the school district employees, we paid their taxes we paid 1 year's of taxes, essentially. Not a huge incentive, but it's 1 year's taxes. We did half 1 year, half the second year, to give the local employees an opportunity.
I'm sorry, I thought you were. We were at an economic development conference locally, and there appears to be several large projects coming in. Have you all approached any of these projects, or are you giving any thought to approaching any of these projects to sponsor some of the housing there for their employees? I know that the city of Portland did that, and that worked out well. Unfortunately, they were tied to the Chinese and the dong went up, but that worked well, and everything. Is that part of your marketing strategy, or have you thought about that? Or
Yes.
The reason I ask that is because if you do, then that really helps the younger, less skilled employees to come in and go to work, and they pay, they buy the house from the company, or the company owns the house or whatever. Would y'all be in favor of something like that, or would you be opposed to that, or do you have an opinion?
Yeah, there's absolutely. I'll give you an example. In Pelican Place, that's in Palacios. Formosa is about 20 minutes from there. Now, different industry, different companies have different things. Formosa doesn't let us go in and say, hey, go buy a lot at Pelican Place, but they do let us advertise and talk about it, and so we get a little bit of an open door there. Bay City is a little bit more, some of their industries a little bit more prone to it, so what they do, they actually offer an incentive. If you buy a house now they can't say if you buy a house in Stewart Subdivision, we'll give you a break, but they'll say if you buy a house in, Bay City, we'll give you a $10,000, move-in credit or something. And so those are things that our team will definitely reach out to industry with the help of Jeffrey, and we'll go through and we'll talk to some of this industry, and if we can get them anything, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, anything, to help bring potential employees and residents to the city, we'd absolutely do that. And it helps us. So
I have a daughter that's in her mid-30s, has 4 children, single mom, everything. Her biggest problem is, when it comes to housing, is she can't come up with the $5,000 or $10,000 to do a down payment. Is that something that you are going to try to address?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's 2 or 3 different down payment assistance. Obviously, we're not personally going to be doing it, but we're going to, we'll be able to have people help. And so whether USDA has a good program for first-time home buyers, any of those things to help to offset. There's some that can get in for literally 0% down.
Okay, and I have one more question along that, and then I'll be quiet. What do y'all anticipate? Have y'all done the demographic study of what you anticipate in the next 10 years, what the ethnicity of the population is going to be with the new people coming in that would perhaps be in your subdivision? And the reason I'm saying that is because with Texas changing as fast as it is and everything, I think that's something that's going to have to come into the state financing and everything, is to some way to get first home buyers of all ethnicities have an opportunity to do it, because right now it's real difficult for some ethnicities.
Yes, it's very much a concern. And Ms. Alicia Ward, which is on our staff, she's big into helping those first-time home buyers. So again, you can't advertise to certain ethnicities,
No,
but we're gonna market to everyone. We do a lot of social media not social media as far as Facebook, a lot of online advertising, and we will definitely do a lot in Rockport. And by doing that, it'll hit all the different ethnicities, and we're gonna do everything we can to get them, because again, we'd much rather deal with a first-time home buyer than someone that's gonna come in that's already has 2 or 3 houses. And I'll tell you, brutally honest, one of these issues where you sell houses this I won't say this cheap, but at this price range, you're gonna have people that wanna come and do it as an investment standpoint because they can buy it and rent it out. And it's just part of it. There's nothing we do. We deal with it in Palacios and Pelican Place. We're selling lots to first-time home buyers, but there's a couple that have bought them and rented them out. But so we're not advertising those people. So the more that we can do, to your point, it helps curb that.
Jeff, do you want to elaborate on that last question?
Commissioner, just with regard to the potential clientele, selfishly, the partnership is focused on Aransas County.
Mm-hmm.
We want housing like this to be available to our service sector, to our existing employees, to the folks that work here already. In preparation of the summit, we had the conversations with Gulf Coast Ventures and Steel Dynamics. Their economies are different. Their demographics are different. So they look at the market rate units that are being proposed as something attractive to them, more so than the project or the potential housing that Mr. Lynn would develop. In fact, one of the things that we've heard recently is that I believe it's Steel Dynamics is given a monthly stipend for housing. And based on our housing study, we're already bringing over 10% of regional workforce into Aransas County because of our superior quality of life. Fair housing rules prohibit you from doing much with regard to where it's available. But part of the partnership's effort would be to make sure that we make folks locally aware of and give them the opportunity to be educated on what these houses would be, with the ideal that we would get our locals in there first to satisfy the needs that we have.
Well, if we do a 380 or 381, I'm not real familiar with that because I haven't been involved in that a lot. But there is a provision in there in part of what, where we get approved or not with historically underutilized demographics, right?
Yeah, and when we get into the weeds, if you so choose, then there's some flexibility in terms of what you can look for as a benefit.
I'm not talking about marketing only to a certain group or anything, but I mean, it's advantageous to us for grants and that sort of thing to have a very diverse population.
Yeah. And local first.
That's
our
Yep, does cost of this housing, the price of this housing, fit the demographics of our educators and our law enforcement people in that category?
Yeah, I think so, and you know, the thing about this, there isn't a silver bullet that's gonna solve the challenge. This would be one attempt to try and address an attainable housing demand that we've seen through a number of different conversations and initiatives. I think this in particular could appeal to a large number of folks locally, and part of the game here would be if this was something that we moved forward with and it was successful, then hopefully we've set up a template that if other developers want to come to the table and develop housing at below free market pricing, that we could consider that down the road. But this, kind of like I told Stuart, it's kind of like a petri dish. This is one small attempt to try and address the issue and see whether or not it actually would be successful and saturation would prove itself out.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Council?
Question? Go ahead.
What is your total lot size? I know you said 163, but what's the exact lot size?
50 by 100? 50 by 100.
And then total cost per unit you covered with your 10% margin, but what's your profit margin per unit?
For the builder will be 10%. He's gonna charge his exact, whatever his costs are. And then we'll have a contract, so it'll be whatever, it'll be a set price for the smallest one's 1,178. His price, I think, is 156, so he'll make 10%. Now, that's not profit, that's gross margin. He still has overhead and everything else, but he's only marking up 10%, and that's it.
And then, I know that you had said, you may have, like, where they come in, buy, and rent. The whole purpose of the project is affordable housing. So how are we going to ensure that the project does remain affordable moving forward, where you can have people come in, buy at low cost and rent for high cost? It goes against the objective of the project.
One thing we could do it's called restrictions within the community, we can write those such that we did that in Pelican Place, so that it cannot be an Airbnb or a rental or anything like that. So you can restrict that.
We can get as restrictive as you want. We don't want to start that way because I want that to come from you guys, not as Stuart Lynn as HOA, because we all know how HOAs can be very tedious. So if that's something that y'all are passionate about, that you don't want rentals, then we just put in the HOA agreement, it can't be rentals. Now that can only be for the actual HOA, and you gotta be careful. You have to have your attorney. There's certain things you can't discriminate in one subdivision you can do. So depending on what your city ordinances are, we gotta take a look at it. But from my perspective, we would love to only have first-time home buyers, or just, it doesn't serve us any good to have rent. So we're open to whatever we can do to help mitigate that as much as possible.
That's a great question. From prior experience, one one of the downsides is this really ends up where it's the first home buyer in is the one who benefits. And then the free market sources take over. And so somebody goes in, we did one of, I think we did 50 units in a prior life. And this was 15 years ago, sold them for $150,000. And homeowners have stayed in that development on average 10 years and still haven't sold. In this case, somebody goes in for a couple, 3 years, 5 years, and then goes to sell. Well, the central appraisal district, the increase in valuation is gonna take over, and that next homeowner is gonna pay what the market rate is. So in putting the development agreement, that's where it's gonna be finding the right partner and working with Stewart and marketing it locally, trying to find those local homeowners, so that the last thing we need is a speculator coming in or somebody coming in and doing short-term rentals out of it or renting it. These need to be focused on full-time home ownership for Rockport and Aransas County. But those we can get into in the crafting of the development agreement.
All right. Mayor, a few things. If you wish to speak, would you use Colin's microphone? The two current projects, the one in Palacios and Bay City, was there public-private partnerships in those?
Both of those.
Both of them were.
Both of those are actually TERS. Yeah.
Okay.
I know, I'm not, Palacios is 380. Palacios is 380 with the city only,
Okay.
and then the Bay City one is TERS.
Is it yours? Bay City was a little bit larger, correct? Is that right?
That's correct. It was actually an existing TERS downtown, and we just added it to it, and then they called it kill retreat. I can only get the increment on my property, not on the increment on the TERS, and it's one big TERS. It's got two different kind of tracks. I can only get the increment on that track. But.
Okay. I think you touched on the voluntary annexation, you know, for that one tract that's not in the city limits. What is the total development cost was $6 and some change, $6 million and some change.
Yeah.
What do you think? What's I don't want to get too deep in the business. What is the ask you think going to be for reimbursement?
80%. The increment, 80% would go to pay down that 6.5.
Okay.
Now, out of that 6.5, a little over 100,000 of that is total offsite. For instance, before we even started, is it the Young lift station? There's a lift station somewhere a few blocks from there that needs upgrading. So we'll be paying for that out of pocket. So out of that 6.5, about $1 million of it is offsite that's going to help some potentially in the future adjoining. There's some empty lots they could eventually tie in, but we're not doing anything that's going to tax or service the existing infrastructure. So, yeah.
Okay, so about 80% would be the asking over. Of course, that was under the 380 agreement, but you're thinking 20 years.
Yeah, based on our modeling, it was right at 22 years. If we build this out in 5 years, which you can bet your bottom dollar I'm going to do as fast as I can to build it in 5 years, because 5.5 after that 5 years I don't get any reimbursement. But if we build it out in 5 years, it would take right at between 22 and 23 years to get that investment back.
Okay.
Have you planned out your sewer route to get to that property?
Yes. Yes. The Young lift station is about, if I remember right, 3 blocks from there. So we take a straight line. We're going to increase some pumps at the lift station. We've talked to y'all's engineers out of Corpus, to the city engineers, to make sure. So we'd upgrade that lift station and then run a line from there 3 blocks to tie in our sewer. We met with the city a couple months ago. Went over water, sewer, gas, drainage, all those things to make sure we were hitting those.
Considering all in a perfect world, everything just lines up. When there's no big delays, when are we ready to start moving dirt?
I'm closing on the property March 10th. I'll do the engineering. Take 6 months to get the engineering done, permits, that kind of stuff, and then we'll start the infrastructure. There, about 90 days from that, we'd be ready. That's the goal, is to start building the houses. So essentially, 9 months after March 10th would be best case scenario. Ma'am?
How many months?
9 months. Before we would break ground. That'd be best case scenario before you break ground on a house.
I assume that's currently zoned R1.
R2 or R1? I get confused. It's the, R2.
New would have to be R2, it's a 5,000 square foot lot.
Yeah, so it is, it's R1, because we'd be going to get,
Back here, sorry. What was the question? For 5,000 square foot lot, you need to be zoned R2.
and it's R1 right now.
Yeah.
So it's R1 right now. We'd be asking to get it into R2 so we could do the 50 by 100.
I think what I would, in the development stages of it, I think we need to do that for, prior to
Sure.
the front side, so we don't get too far down the road. And
That's right. Yeah, and that would all be spelled out in the development agreement at 380, 381, that's gonna be brought in, and we'd have to already have that through council, ahead of time, yes.
in that Young Street lift station, obviously you're gonna add capacity to that lift station. That would give us the potential ability to tie in some of those areas that are outside, that are in our bubble, if there was capacity in that line, to tie in some of those residents that are on septic over there, and to.
We'll be asking for.
Most of that, we've already got grants and got sewer in.
It already is.
It'd be, when you design the subdivision, if you have a way to hook onto the sewer on the west side of that subdivision, it would give some advantage to the surrounding area, but the city's looked at the capacity from the Young Street lift station.
Yes.
Back to.
Yes. Who's engineer in Corpus? Brandy, who's back in Corpus? It's whoever the city uses in Corpus, what's the name? Urban. Urban ran it, and I don't think they ran it for anything outside the city limits, but they ran it for everything in our subdivision and any empty lots in that area that, don't have, a house on their net. So if there was a house, potentially it would.
The county's done quite a few sewer grants east of where you're at right now.
Okay.
I didn't think in the ask, that may be a good ask on the public side, to see if we can't get.
Yeah, you might look at, okay, where they're running through the subdivision, can they create some benefit for the stuff around it?
Yes, sir.
That's the problem. A lot of that in there is too far to.
Yeah, too far for the homeowners. So, if the developer comes for that ask, I think that'd be a prudent ask from our side if we're participating in it, to try to help out that side.
Yeah, we're open to any of that.
So, I guess council commissioners, this is kind of like a really introduction to this project. What's missing is like numbers. And we could have another workshop, it could be joint, so that we're all hearing the same information at the same time. With some of the numbers you had, like the property values and kind of like the 80%, in projection, what it's gonna look like. And,
yeah, my ask going forward, the big thing was this is very general, just to get your sentiment. If we want to move to the next step, then we can do all that would be the next step. I mean, if you didn't want to do it, well, then that way I can go a different direction. So yes, as long as the council and the commissioners or counties on board with next steps, obviously you're not committing anything. We'd do that very thing and get a little bit more in the weeds. We have a 380 and 381. We'd have a draft agreement, stipulate all the fine print, and then start having those conversations on what an agreement would look like.
This is a problem that we've been trying to deal with for years now and discussing among ourselves, and this is the first concrete meeting that we have had with somebody that is talking about actually doing the development. And I appreciate that very much. I plan to do, and that right now we're discussing it. There will be decisions made somewhere in the future, but after we know a lot more about it. But it is an exciting thing to look at as a prospect for trying to get our working people a place to live, people that moved away because of the hurricane, people that lost their job because of COVID, and we have lost them out of the schools, over 200 some odd kids and like that. And this is at least, at first glance, a good opportunity to get some of those folks back. And I appreciate Judge bringing this before us, and appreciate the public, those of you that are here, every one of you, thank you for coming.
Andrew?
Judge?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Andrew. I had a couple of questions, but just to step back one, there's been some questions. What is a 380, 381 agreement? What is that? And with your indulgence, I just want to give a quick 20-second. In the local government code of Texas, it's governed by chapters, and there's chapter 380, chapter 381. This is nothing more than a glorified development agreement, but in chapter 380 of the local government code, it's actually the shortest chapter in the code, but it gives local municipalities the right to grant or give pretty much anything they want in the name of economic development for public purpose. And so the counterpart is the 381 for the county. It's very similar, as you've seen, to a tax increment reinvestment zone, but the basic concept here is that what we're looking at is the infrastructure reimbursement, but it would be on the developer's back to invest in all that infrastructure up front and then be reimbursed a portion of that investment over time based on what all you decide to do. So very simplistic, but just for clarification.
Appreciate that, thank you.
With that, appreciate everyone. Just want to say a quick thing. Vanessa with the city, I think leadership starts at the top, and Vanessa's been amazing to work with. We've had several meetings with her on the county side. The judge has been awesome. So again, leadership, without that, you're just floating in the wind. Jeffrey's done a great job. So we appreciate all the collaboration. We'll stay around after it's over for anybody that didn't get a chance to ask a question or in the audience. We'll stay around, and our goal is to be open and honest and transparent, and this is what we're wanting to do, and we're here to help and do our part. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, Andrew Kane, 2106 Lakeview Drive. About a year ago in August at a city workshop, the city staff had came to y'all and said we want to do a moratorium or look at increasing our impact fees. And I just want to go through some quotes from all of y'all that y'all discussed. So the city manager has said that they are paying impact fees, $3,000 for water and sewer, but I'm seeing other areas coming in at 8 to 12, and that's what we're losing here. That money goes directly back into refurbishing and helping our systems. We are collecting it, we just got to catch up. That is the deficiency, that is a major deficiency I've identified in the year I've been here that is huge, is we're not getting the impact fees. Legal definition for moratorium is water and sewer, health and safety. This staff needs to pause. We need to regroup on water and sewer attainable goals. We need to get a good market estimate and say, you're paying $3,000 impact fee, but what you really owe us as impact fee is $10,000 per house. That's the sum of the fee. These are quotes, by the way. Another option that I would like is a new development comes in, and they're going to have to pay their impact fees. We can do a developer agreement and require developer contribution. That is the way to stop this hemorrhaging of money we put back into the funds and start upgrading our systems. What she's talking about is our water and sewer, it can't keep up with the current residents. And we need new developers coming in, we need an impact fee so they can pay for the impact to improve our system so they can be welcomed in. The mayor said our impact fee study is outdated. The mayor continued, he said, one of my main concerns is water. I'm talking to San Pat Water District right now. If we need more water, they have some concerns about where they're going to get it. If we continue to grow at the rate we have been, we are not ready to identify where we are going to supply water to these people. We're going to have subdivisions come in here where people haven't gotten water, and that's going to be our fault because we didn't take care of it. The mayor said he had no problem with that 6-month or a year moratorium on new developments. If water and sewer are not already on that street, they would have to wait to build. Talk about let's infill. Y'all talk about that. Let's infill the lots we got. And there's lots you can build on this town right now for $40,000 that the citizens don't have to pay for. Councilman Hatton said, we have to stop and get things done and get prepared before new development comes in. Referring to water and sewer master plan that needs to be done. She goes, I like an impact fee option to help pay for it. Councilman Hell said, our responsibility first and foremost is the residents of the city in Rockport that we have now to make sure we're providing them services, and at this point, we're not providing services to all of our residents. To me, that is a justification to say, hold up, we do not, what do we do to infill the available spaces? Number one has to be our existing people. I thought I understood our goal was to diversify our tax base and not continue to keep adding more houses. We need some commercial influx, and the mayor's talked about that too. We're too reliant on residential property taxes and not enough commercial. Councilman Brundrett said he's not comfortable with he is more comfortable with the strategic development agreement, referring to the impact fees, than a moratorium. Hatman disagreed. She said it's not about the money, wanting more impact fees. We are developing way too fast for us to she said, we're developing way too fast for us to even catch up. We need to take a step back and actually look at everything we need to get done for our citizens. So basically at that meeting, this council, y'all talked about, we're growing too fast, we don't have the infrastructure, and we don't have the means to pay for it. And it's a year later, and all I keep hearing, I mean, when you open this can of worms with the Pearl Point, which we got nothing out of, it all went market rate, this subdivision's not gonna have any control on who buys them. I can buy them and rent them for $2,000 a month. It's not gonna guarantee affordable housing. But it's, when you open this can of worms, Al Hogan, D.R. Horton, everyone that's developed in this town, they've done it, paying the developer, paying their own cost. And $250,000, is that obtainable? I don't know. But I know D.R. Horton's building here. They're also building in Houston where I rent a house, and they're building not 1,100 square feet houses, they're building 1,700 square feet houses, 1, 2 doors down from me up there, 1,700 square feet, 229. That developer's doing it without taxpayer help. So if this developer can't find a way for his project to be affordable, it's not the job of y'all to make sure he makes a profit. And that's what I'm hearing. He wants to make sure he has a profit. He's got to come up with a building plan that's affordable, pays on infrastructure costs like Al Hogan and every other developer ever did, and do his project. And if it's not affordable, then it's not affordable. But let's not continue to open this can of worms where for all time developers have paid their own way. Now it's every time we turn around, you want to take from one person to give to another person to make sure they're developable. And it's not the existing people's responsibility in this town to make sure these new developers are profitable. It's free market. So please, let's not continue on this path of abatements to new development. And let's not continue, like y'all said, we don't have the infrastructure for water and sewer, and we don't have the impact fees for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. All right. I guess I kind of covered number 3 when I said, let's have another workshop and bring some numbers. Or Vanessa, did you have anything for item number 3?
That's fine. If we can have these ladies work together to figure out a date that works for everybody.
Yep.
Stuart, how much time do you need to pull your information together? 2 weeks? Okay, within the next 2 weeks or so? We'll have everybody here again, if you don't mind. Same time of day work?
My March is pretty jacked. It might have to be, what's after March? April? Might have to be in April.
Okay.
But we'll, yeah, get with Tracy.
Yep.
Can we get an input on kind of the ideas that we want to take part of, so we're not repeating what we're doing now, but what exactly we want to look at in the next meeting? Yeah, just dollars.
Yeah.
And maybe, sure.
Yeah, that would be one of the things, that would be one of the things I'd like to see is, with the city, concurrence, would be to look at what it's going to cost the city and the citizens to do future development, you know, in size of plant and distance and things like that. And, you know, I have no idea what the capacity is.
Tell me that again.
To answer that, Commissioner, we have an impact study,
It's going on right now.
It's underway with-
Done in a couple months.
Freeze and Nichols, is that right? That's who's doing it, and that should be finished, just a couple months. It was gonna take about a year to complete that study, and we started it shortly after that meeting that Mr. Kane is addressing. We engaged that impact fee study.
And we've also, worked through our water capacity.
Water capacity with impact, has been,
Working, yeah.
we're golden on our water capacity,
Mhm.
and our sewer capacity, according to Urban, is
We would be asking for upgrades and upsizing of this, for this development that would open up more land in the county, in the area that, in the southern area. I mean, I can't tell you specifically what areas, but we would ask for more capacity to open up those areas to homes. So, as far as cost, is that what he was asking?
No, I think he was just wondering about the capacities, much like Mr. King was saying, the capacities of the availabilities and or cost of what it would be for the future development in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of work in 2 years since we proposed a moratorium to get a hold on things. Business continues whether we like it or not, so we have a pretty good handle on everything at this point. It's not happening fast, but it's happening.
And it's at that time we had unknowns. We didn't have the answers that were provided shortly thereafter, other than the impact fees.
At this point, what we've got is a recommendation or an intent by somebody to do a development that will benefit the city and the county and our public. And we don't know all the answers right now, and I respect what Mr. Kane had to say, I understand that. But when we have future meetings, we will know more about what the cost will be and what our ability to deal with them will be, especially when a study's done.
We should also probably be able to determine alternate methods of affecting the cost, so that, you know, it doesn't cost, you know, $1 million to get subdivision in, but it also don't do it for $1 either. And that's the thing I want to do.
Yes, sir. Okay,
All right.
that's my views.
Cool.
Set up a meeting in 2 weeks, Stuart will have this information together. If you have any questions in the meantime, if you'll email them to me, copy Shelley and Tracy on them. If you have anything that you want specifically answered, at the next meeting, we'll have that done for you.
All right. Entertain motion to adjourn. Second.
You need to adjourn your meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion, second. We're adjourned.
Commissioner Cheney? Commissioner Casterline? Commissioner Russo? Commissioner Dupnick? Judge Garza?